Hi, my name is Malenga and I will talk about the changing face of R&B and how it made an impact on society before and in our day. Also, I will feature the key elements of what led the genre to succeed and what it means for the future of R&B. Rhythm and blues was first used in 1940. Rhythm was described as the music dependence on measures of bars with a backbeat, and blues were taken from the lyrics and melodies of songs which were often sad coming out from World War II. In 1950, R&B started to define the sound of rock and roll, which developed in the 60s into soul music. In 1970, disco and funk were incorporated, and interestingly, in the 80s, R&B began to infuse all of these with addition to pop music. In the 1990s, R&B was mostly associated with love music, and into the 21st century, New Jack Swing, hip hop, and neo soul. This was a combination of an African American urban sound that evolved from blues and jazz. Now, moving on to the technical side, well paid producers that adapted the hip hop image and can be marketed as such were used in creating R&B tracks. There was a strong driving beat in a quadruple meter, and it was usually a fast paced style of music. At the beginning, they used to use small bands to generate the same energy as a large band with a strong lead vocalist. Around World War II, it accompanied technological developments such as an electric guitar and tape recorder. This simplified the recording process. This led individuals to start independent record companies as major labels had little interest in R&B. This opened labels such as Atlantic and Chess Production and Distribution. R&B played a role in the impact of American culture between blacks and whites and has helped to promote unity between different cultures as the music content carried common ground lyrically and by the mirror of genre it represented. Popular music and styles were created to meet the taste of the demographic groups which developed the urban sound of R&B. In 1940, due to the sociological, industrial, and technological changes that took place prior to and during World War II, R&B presented an emotional expression and gave connection of similarity to the audience. Ryland's Rebecca mentioned that R&B female musicians during the hip-hop generation played a part in creating a body of work from a female point of view, which provided an answer to the problems during that time. For instance, singers were open to sing about sexual assault, relationship abuse, and having a female voice in society. Prior to the 90s, R&B made a huge connection with society events at the time. This moved the audience and created a buzz that generated R&B sales. Due to hip hop culture becoming gangster, it triggered the young urban society, which meant that sales were explosive and label profits increased. R&B singers became less noticeable because of this, and income from this genre decreased dramatically. However, as R&B made a huge connection with society pre-90s, R&B has fought to still influence and move the audience and create the same buzz which has generated their sales today. As well as R&B being influenced by other genres and creative forms, R&B also made a marketable impact on other popular music. The Rolling Stones' first titled album had an R&B infusion, which led them to later become the second most popular band in the UK. Hence, this is how rhythm and blues made a large impact on how it influenced rock. Ironically, in the 1950s, R&B infused rock and used this inspiration to evolve into soul as part of R&B. When black Americans came to Britain during the Cold War, they brought back music of soul, jazz, and R&B. This created the mod culture, which can be described as a group of young people in the 1960s that were termed modernists. The elements of this culture included fashion and music, and involved heavily on dancing all night at the club, which at the time was seen as immoral. However, this mod culture that was influenced by modern jazz developed this crowd into appreciating British R&B bands such as The Who and the Rolling Stones. R&B musicians were able to integrate different genres into their style of music, which carried them out as unique. For instance, Diana Ross was one of the first black singers to break into the movie sector, coming from the sensational band The Supremes. Ray Charles, although blind, was able to integrate country and western music. Sam Cooke opened the door to mainstream music by his unique silky voice, and Beyoncé has made a huge influence on pop music itself. Although these are to name a few, most R&B musicians broke into the industry by following or creating similar routes. Some R&B artists from the 1990s had to uphold a tougher hip-hop image in order to prevail in the industry. For instance, musicians such as Joe Thomas, Mary J. Blige, and Jodeci. It was only when they started to collaborate with hip-hop artists that their music career began to flourish. Moving on to the media presence of R&B, many started selling their radio stations with fear that the television progression may end the radio scene. This was bought by new station owners, which were urbanized black Americans. These allowed the new independent companies to air their sounds to a black audience. TV channels limited their coverage of R&B to late-night specials. However, from the 1980s, MTV started playing R&B music videos on their stations, and it also began to receive mainstream coverage on TV. Paul Williams and his Hucklebuckers recorded the Hucklebuck that became a hit. This was considered risky and raunchy at the time. This was the first measurable commercial success, evidence in the charts coming from the R&B genre. However, in the 70s and 80s, R&B produced a diverse assortment of stars with unique different styles that were evidenced in the charts, such as Shaka Khan, Barry White, and the Isley Brothers. Whitney Houston and Janet Jackson sold over 20 million copies. However, in 1999, Billboard ranked Janet Jackson and Mariah Carey as the first and second most successful artists. In the 21st century, R&B has included New Jack Swing, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Without these fuses of subgenre, it has been difficult for R&B to stand as an individual genre. R&B was about emotional connection, most of which gave a connection of similarity to the audience. Before, it was about good times with music that had lyrics with actual meaning and content. However, in the 90s, present R&B has been more of a negative influence, which has sexual message or violent innuendo, so the lyrical content has changed. However, due to the decrease in economy from the R&B sector, post-2005, the growing success of talents signals that R&B may be regaining the same impact it had prior 1990s. Artists such as Marsha Ambrosius, Elvana, Miguel, and Chris Brown, just to name a few, are following the same route and strategies that successful R&B artists have taken, if not even by surpassing their success. Just like before, lyrics played a huge role to R&B music. Over the past few years, R&B artists have made a new approach to lyrics, production, and melody to the music. With this, fan bases are beginning to increase in R&B, and now that is beginning to bring back the impact it had before. In summary, we've seen that R&B is infused with a number of different genres that have emerged during the years. R&B broke into the industry from the time radio stations were bought by black Americans. This allowed R&B music to be aired on radio stations, which was able to promote all the tracks and artists to a wider audience, which in turn was able to expand the media presence and commercial success of the musicians. R&B has contributed to the unity of cultures in society. At the beginning, R&B was able to combine the white and black culture in the American society. R&B was then brought to Britain, which was able to bring together the modern society, who again began to appreciate R&B music. Since then, R&B has made a global connection and has been able to unify different people throughout the world in appreciating R&B music. Today, R&B does not make as much sales as it did before due to the hip hop culture. However, things are now beginning to develop as R&B musicians have started to incorporate the skills and knowledge which were used by R&B musicians back in the day, but have been able to add the new technological developments, which has then been able to maximize sales and been able to bring back R&B into the commercial light. R&B has made a number of measurable commercial success. As mentioned before, we had artists such as Shaka Khan, Barry White, and the Isley Brothers. Today, we have commercial success from the likes of Usher, Chris Brown, Ryan Leslie, and different modern R&B artists. The future of R&B lies in the hands of musicians that are adapting the techniques used by R&B artists in the past. We see, as mentioned before, new artists being able to combine the skills that we used before. It's into their hands to see how they'll be able to carry the same success which was brought from before in being able to develop the R&B sector in modern society and being able to create the same buzz it did before. Thank you.